Alrighty then. It's time for another episode of Second Cup with me, your host, Tim Heller. My guest for today's episode is the queen, the titan of the VO industry herself, Maria Pendolino. After working in the TV world, theater world, and film world, Maria began working in voiceover and has been at home behind the mic ever since. You can hear her signature youthful and conversational voice in spots for Geico, Glad Trash Bags, Xfinity, and so much more. I have a 100% guarantee that you have heard her everywhere, including an iconic episode of HGTV's House Hunters. What? She is also proudly one of the admins of the Disabled Voice Actors database that launched in December of 2022. Now, top off your beverage, get comfy, and enjoy this episode of Second Cup with my friend Maria Pendolino. Welcome, Maria Pendolino, queen of the voiceover world, to Second Cup. Thank you so much for taking time out of your fucking wild schedule to come on the show and hang out with me for a little bit.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, and I know we mentioned this before when we just had a little chat, but it's wild that in the 5 years that I've been doing this, that we haven't crossed paths officially yet. It's just been like in the periphery of
It's
VA
so
NYC and
strange.
different groups.
So strange. And I think obviously social media gives us a weird approximate adjacency to people,
Yep.
right? Because if you follow someone on Instagram, you've basically committed to accepting the slices of their life that they provide to you.
Yeah.
Or if you get to recognize someone's name on Facebook and you see them chiming in on threads here and there, you feel like you get to know them because you get to know their opinions, their thoughts. Do you value the same things in the industry? Are they recommending
Mm-hmm.
things that you would recommend, whatever? And you're one of those people who, after your 5 years in the industry, I felt like I already knew you ish.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of knew the jig a little bit. And from shares on social media and then from listening to the podcast, I was like, okay, I feel like I know who you are. But then when we got on Zoom to have our little, pre-podcast chat, it was like, why haven't I been friends with this person for the last 5 years? Because it's that false adjacency, and it feels like
Yep.
we already were. And not that I deliberately didn't take the effort to reach out to you or be like, I should have coffee with Tim Heller. It's just
Yeah.
you just I don't know. It's you just get this false sense of already established friendships, and you're like, actually, no, you should take the time to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we both are friends with Marco Camarota and YouTube's Marco Domenico, Marco Meatball. And just and like it just took us scheduling a phone call. I don't even remember how we started talking, but I'll call him on road trips and we'll just talk about life and work or not work and just be friends. And it sometimes it's just as simple as being like, hey, do you want to just I'm kind of struggling with this. Would you want to just jump on the phone really quick and we can just talk through this together? And
Yeah.
most people that are worth having the conversation with will say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I basically appointed myself the godmother of his dog, Luna. And I text him every couple weeks and I just demand Luna
Luna
content.
content.
And
Yeah,
then I
she's so sweet.
mail a bag of toys from Chewy or something, or Amazon, every once in a while.
Oh. Well, I would love for the folks who are listening who are not familiar with your dominance in the industry to just get a quick intro on who you are, what you do, and then we'll dive into all the stuff about how you got to VO and our kind of crossovers with our pasts here.
Yeah, for sure. So I have been doing voiceover now for 13 years, lucky number 13. I do a lot of work in commercials and industrial things like corporate narration, e-learning, explainer videos, medical, telephone systems, kind of all of those non-advertising genres. I do a little bit of documentary narration. I've done some video games and some animation. There's not really a lot of stuff I don't do. I've done several audiobooks, but I would consider myself retired from audiobooks at this time.
Mm-hmm.
um, during the uh, during the 2 and 4 year cycles. I do a lot of political voiceover. So yeah, I kind of do a lot of different stuff. I would say I really hit my sweet spot when there is comedy in the script. So commercials that have any sort of wry, dry, or sarcasm in the spirit of like Janine Garofalo and Aubrey Plaza. Like
Hmm.
those are really my sweet spot. I love anything where I can just kind of do my like eyebrow like naturally and just kind of let that come into the voice.
Let them take over.
Yeah, exactly. I love auditioning for things like ADR and voice match because I really love to try.
Yeah.
Like I love to try to get like a celebrity's cadence and like mimic their voice. And I find myself like contorting myself in the booth to like put my head and my neck in all sorts of different places to get, different sound placement to try and find, their exact rhythm and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
It's like
That's
learning
something
a
that I
new
just
piece of music, isn't it? It's like if you have a music
yeah.
background, I feel like that's why I'm able to do all like a bunch of different voices and impressions and stuff is because of the history and playing instruments and singing.
Yeah, and like those auditions usually come up like so fast and furious because it's usually like for a movie trailer or they're finishing a
Hmm.
movie or whatever and they need like someone right then right now. And I know that like the chance of booking those jobs is so slim just because of like time, like literally sometimes the first person in like might make it into the rough cut and then like they just go with that person. So like for
Yep.
whatever reason, I think of those types of auditions as like zero stress, doesn't matter, have probably 0.000.1 chance of booking it anyway.
Yeah.
So like I really enjoy just like throwing my hat into the ring for kind of that wild industry stuff. Like nobody in college is telling you that if you want to do voiceover, like one thing you can do is like try to create
Loop
Sigourney
groups and
Weaver's voice in
ADR.
your booth,
Yeah,
you
it's
know? So it's just like one of those
that's the
things that like you
easiest
didn't
way
even
into
know
the
that this part of
industry.
the industry existed. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, that's a little bit about me and what I do. I really enjoy being a advocate in the voiceover community for negotiation and thinking of yourself like a business.
Yeah.
I think for actors especially, we grow up in the industry kind of being conditioned to say yes because one job leads to the next job, or a director is going to like you and then they'll invite you to audition again or whatever that is. Um, and I help people think, especially those folks who are going after their own work or direct marketing and maybe not doing everything under the purview of an agent or a manager, really thinking how to operate like a business and advocate for yourself. And recently, I've also started to become a little bit of an advocate for disabled creatives in our industry and collaborated on launching in December the Disabled Voice Actors Database, which stands on the shoulders and alongside of the PGM VO list for BIPOC and people of color, and the Queer Vox list for people in the
Mm.
LGBTQIA plus community. So, yeah, that's a little bit about my voiceover life in a nutshell. Spend a good 6 hours a day in this little padded box behind me.
Yeah.
And otherwise,
It
I've
all
got
sounds
Ursula watching over me while I'm editing.
it all sounds like very relaxing and not very high stakes. Like you don't have a lot going on.
No, no, no. Just, a little bit here or there.
Yeah, it's all bonbons and video games for Maria. It's so I would love to start off with how you started approaching your business like a business and being an actor like a business, because I know that at least in my experience in going through musical theater school and as you start talking to professionals and asking like how do I do this and I want like this is going to be my life, and they're like, well, you are your product and you have to treat yourself like a business. And like, yeah, okay, that's all fine and well, but how did you learn how to do that, and what are some key principles that you wish you would have known day one?
Yeah. So I think I have a stranger than average origin story in that
Hmm.
in my last 2 years of college, I interned at HSBC Bank, which is a
Oh
large
wow.
global bank. And then I ended up taking a job with them when I graduated from college because I really wanted to move to New York City. And, I come from a very classic middle class American family, and my parents didn't have like 7 grand cash to hand me for, first month's, last month's security deposit.
Hmm.
So I really needed to have a job. I really needed to have money to like physically get to New York and get established. So I took a job with HSBC and I was pursuing kind of acting part time alongside that while working at the bank. And I did that for almost 10 years. So while I was learning about the arts in New York, I was also working full time in finance. So I
Wow.
got kind of I mean, not really like an MBA document, but like, I worked at a bank.
Yeah, you had
So I learned a lot
that real life
about
experience.
finance and accounting and like customer service and compliance and all of these things that go into running a business too. So, when I actually hit the ground running in 2010 and left my job at the bank and was like, I am actor, capital A, that's all I do. And then like grabbed a couple of like, part-time side jobs to pay the bills instead. I came into that with then, having 10 years of working at a bank. So the things like, taking care of my money and making sure that I was paying my tax estimates, being able to read really complicated boilerplate contracts. A couple years in
Mhm.
corporate America and you get really good at reading dense, stupid text. So, I was good about that. I had polite arguments or polite fights with vendors and people in corporate America. So writing back to a client saying, I don't accept these terms and I'd like to ask for changes. I already kind of had comfortable and facility for writing, slightly friendly / pointed emails. So
Yeah.
just some of those like skills, it's a muscle, right? You get better and
Mhm.
better every time you do it. So I think I was able to approach my business from a place of comfort, maybe earlier than some freelancers would be able to.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely part of it. And then I think I started to realize like the the biggest part that was helpful was record keeping, like being able to look back at clients that I had worked for or if I had quoted a similar job. So one
Mm.
thing that I wish I would have started like the moment I started voiceover was starting to keep some of those records because I feel like for a couple of years, I probably went back to the drawing board more times than I needed to. So, like a client comes into your inbox and is like, oh, I have a project. Can you give me a quote? I sit down there and I'm like doing the math and thinking about it. And then I realize like I've done this before. Like this
Yeah.
request is not unlike request XYZ from 6 months ago. So I started a Google Doc that I call popular quotes where I kind of like after I write something in an email, I then copy it and drop it in there. So the next time someone comes to me and is like, "Oh, I have a e-learning course of 5,000 words," I can be like, "Oh, I just quoted something like that. Let me grab that off
Boom.
of my popular quotes page." And then I ran my business off of a like I think it was at one point it was a 32 column Excel spreadsheet.
Good
Google Doc
lord.
for a while with like, client name, date I delivered the audio, invoice number, email address it goes to, comments that need to be on the invoice. Do they need
Just
a
built out your
W-9? All
own
of those things.
CRM. Yeah.
Yeah. And I ran my business on that probably 4 years longer than I should have. And then ultimately I made the decision to move over to Salesforce, which is
Wow.
I
Yeah.
I don't recommend that voice actors go out and buy Salesforce. Salesforce is a Ferrari when you need a Toyota Yaris.
Yeah.
So, but it happened to be a system that I was familiar with from my corporate America and nonprofit management days. So I was instantly comfortable with it. And I actually hired one of my former coworkers to customize the platform for me for what I needed for voiceover. But I wish I would have moved into a system like that sooner because it provides so many things that a 32 column spreadsheet can't do. But that record keeping and having that data is really, really helpful as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that, when I first started, for the first like 2 years of voiceover, I think I kind of struck out mostly on my own because I didn't even realize that VA NYC was a thing. If I had, I feel like I would be like way further down the line from where I am now in terms of like that record keeping and some more of like the business savvy things that you just don't know until you don't know that you don't know until you don't know it. Um, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's super important, but I think I jumped into like looking at a CRM like year two when I was still working on like what is my thing? What am I really good at in this instead of like I need to just start filling out a CRM because that means that I'm successful, So
I
it's
think that, there are there are aspects that are really helpful to have from day one and go. And then there are things that if you get to like a pain point, right?
Mhm.
You're like, okay, my business has grown to a size or a volume where this is no longer the right thing. And now I have this pain point that I want to try to
Yeah.
address. So I do think that there's like a natural progression. Like I definitely didn't need to be using Salesforce in the first 3 years of my business,
Yeah.
but by year 4 or 5, it probably would have been helpful. But I think you get to the point where you realize when you're ready for things, you're ready to level up.
Mhm.
That would come from a page of Karin Gilfrey's the treatises of Karin Gilfrey, which is Grow as You Go.
Oh my gosh, did she
You
actually say grow as you go too?
Oh yes,
I know it's
yes.
not an original thing, but that's something I talk about all the time with like my student. I put together a course because I had too many people asking me about how to get started in voiceover. So I made a free course on YouTube. And one of the key things that I annoyingly say, and on this podcast too, is just grow as you go. Because
Yeah, I think there's so much advice out there, right? And if you go into 4 voiceover Facebook groups and you ask what you need to start, everybody's going to give you a different answer.
yeah, and
Somebody's going to
bless
tell
you
you you
if
need
you
to have
ask that. Yeah.
$10,000 for equipment. Somebody's going to tell you that you need to have this much in savings and you need to do this. And somebody's going to be like, you need to buy this microphone and get this foam. And it's like, oh, for the love.
Yeah,
So
and if you go
I
into a voiceover group, don't ask that question. Use the search function, and then
yes.
to ask that question, ask that to the search function, and then the first question should be who like voiceover classes online or near me or wherever that is, because
Yes.
otherwise you will save yourself a lot of bridge trolls that are in these
Yeah,
groups.
I think people get so hung up on, you know, doing things the right way or by the book, and the honest answer is there's 1,000 different ways to come at working as a creative person, whether it's voice
Mhm.
acting or something else. There's 1,000 different ways to start, and I think people also get really hung up on like the idea of being professional and wanting to make sure that they're demonstrating that they are professional. And I understand that, almost all of us are now working exclusively from home. So we've got, producers and engineers reaching out to ask about, what type of kit we have at home, what type of setup we have, because they want
Mhm.
to know what they're going into when they book us for a session, right? The first 4 years of my voiceover life were spent in a pre war closet in Astoria, Queens. That was not a walk
Yeah,
in closet, but I could
same.
open the door. I could sit on a folding stool and I could physically shut the door behind me. Now, I didn't have any room, so I did most of my voiceover work like hands in front, like I was a boxer ready to go. Because if I
Yeah.
moved my arms that way, I was going to scratch the foam on either side. And there was a shelf right here, so I had to do everything seated, which I would have done anyway, but I had a shelf right here. And the treatment that I had in that closet, and again, I used this for 4 years. I had 4 Bed Bath and Beyond twin sized egg crate mattress pads
Yes,
that
ma'am.
were $19.99 each. I stole the rug that goes around the toilet from our bathroom and I put that on the hardwood floor to absorb reflections. I was sitting on a 19.99 folding stool from Amazon, and
Oh
I
yeah.
had a big down alternative comforter that I put on the top shelf to absorb the reflections above me. I
This is
had a
another, like, crazy connection that we have of, like, this closet in
yeah,
Queens that it is, like, it sounds identical to mine. It was 3 by 3, and I could like, my shoulders would barely fit in it because we
yes,
still had to you can't not use a closet if you have one in New York City because
that's right.
it's so rare. So there was all of our stuff was in there too, but, like, I ended up drilling a monitor into the wall at some point when I was like, "I'm living in this thing. I need to, like, economize a little bit."
Yeah, I
But
had one
yeah.
of those, like, metal folding music stands, like, the
Yeah.
kind that you could, like, fold
Oh.
up and put in, like, your, cello bag. I had that, but I didn't have it standing on the ground. I was just using sorry, Sennheiser. I was just using the top half of it, so I actually put it on, like, the robe hook that was in the closet. So the music stand is just hanging off the robe hook, and then I
Yeah.
had my iPad on there, and that was the only light I had in the booth was the glow of the iPad. And I
Oh,
was
yeah.
using a Audio Technica AT2020 USB
Mhm.
mic that I got off of eBay used for $99. And
Yes.
I used that setup for 4 years and I
Mhm.
got 0 complaints from
Yep.
agents that I submitted auditions to. That was when I was working a lot and auditioning a lot on online casting, and I got picked a lot for stuff there. And I actually even did some directed sessions with people on Zoom for like explainer videos or something when they wanted to direct in. I would have I would have my phone with like corded earbuds at that time. This was pre AirPods. I'm
Oh
dating
yeah.
myself.
What a time.
Um I would have like if I would like join Zoom or join a conference call on my phone, I would have one earbud in my ear and I would have one earbud in my belly button so that I could use my other ear to listen to myself talking, and then I would hear them, and then I wouldn't have any bleed from their conversations because the other earbud was secure. And that would sit on the music stand. My phone would sit on the music stand with the iPad, and like that was the setup. And then eventually I outgrew that. And I was like,
Yep.
I am doing too much work that is too high profile to feel comfortable in this space. I can't see a goddamn thing and I want more. And that's when I upgraded to a booth, and that's when I upgraded my mic, and I've, continued to grow since then. But I didn't set that up on day 1 or day 2 or day
No.
3, And I didn't spend 10 to, $8 to $10,000 on equipment at the beginning. I waited until I had a business that justified spending all the rest of it.
Yep. Yeah, I did my first TV and radio ads with Raspberry from Blue.
Mhm.
And I don't think they make them anymore, but they're great little travel mic you can plug into your phone. I plugged it into an iPad, recorded on the iPad with the microphone was inside of a Beats headphone case stuffed with towels, and then I made a pillow fort on a desk in our in one of the extra rooms in our apartment with a quilt over my head, and that's how I recorded my first like 5 or 6 jobs, and
Yep.
they went to air, and it was fine. But and using that again, like growing as you go, and using that money when you're ready and you have it to build out and build whatever you are. And now you have your whole office and you have a booth, and I've got my office that is a booth, and
Yep.
but it's again not day 1, but year 5, year 4, whenever it
There's
happens.
There is a national commercial that aired on television that is on my demo that was recorded in my pre-war closet with egg crate mattress pads and a USB mic. So here's
Fuck yeah.
everybody. Here's your scavenger hunt challenge from today's podcast episode. Go listen to my commercial demo on my website and then email me and tell me which one you think is the one that was recorded on the USB mic, because it's going to be hard for you to tell.
Yeah, we'll have Julius add that as a question on the Spotify for everybody listening on Spotify. The question in this episode is, which spot in Maria's demo was recorded in the closet?
That's right.
So one of the other things that you mentioned was the disabled voice actors database. I would love
Mhm.
for us to hear more about how you built this and what brought you to wanting to build a resource like this.
Yeah, so our voice acting colleague Nick Germain, who's an awesome voice actor, he's very active on Twitter. I'm not super active on Twitter, but I kind of pop in and out of conversations that happen there. He started the disabled voice actors Google list, kind of version 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
So after seeing the PGM list and the QueerVox list out there, he just started kind of a very simple Google Doc that people could add themselves to as a resource for people to find disabled voice actors. And the aim was kind of twofold. One, when there are disabled characters and you're looking specifically for a disabled person to authentically tell a story, here's a place where you can find them in the list, because we hear from casting directors when they're trying to cast, a difficult role that comes with that kind of authenticity that not as many people have, that it's hard for them to find folks because they're just not that, agencies don't have that kind of bench strength in very, very specific types of things, whether that's a disability or, a maybe less frequently called for like background or language. They cast very, very wide nets. So the
Yeah.
idea was, how can we get that information into their hands? And then also just encouraging people to try to include disabled folks in their casting. Make the effort to send your breakdown to some disabled talent so that they have the opportunity from an inclusion standpoint and an accessibility standpoint. So I saw Nick's list and added myself to it. And then I realized really quickly what a behemoth of information it was in a very unfriendly format to potentially voice seekers. And that's because it was just a free form Google list. So someone could add themselves and their name and email address, and then maybe they would list their disability as ASD, which stands for autism spectrum disorder. And then someone might write their disability as autism. And then someone might write their disability as autism SD, autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
So those three people are listing that they share the same disability. But if a casting director were to go in and search, they might not get all three of those people if they were searching for that, because people were using different verbiage. And through no fault of anyone, but just like it was free form. It wasn't built necessarily to be searchable. So I reached out to Nick and I was like, hey, I have an idea. I think we could take this to the next level by putting it into more of a database format where there's just a little bit of formality and standardization. And I said, I have the resources and I have a virtual assistant who can kind of like take on this work. Like, would you be interested in having that help? And he was like, yes. And I was like, wonderful, I'm moving in. So I reached out to a couple other colleagues who I knew identify as a disabled voice actor. And we put together kind of like a little steering committee of folks to kind of help make decisions. And then we moved the database over to Airtable with a very, very lengthy but very standardized intake form.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sent that out to everybody who was listed on the original list, and then kind of put it out into the universe on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and the different places where voice actors gather, and invited people to fill it out. And then we launched it in December, right around the International Day of People with Disabilities. And up to date, I think we've got about 45 companies that have requested access credentials so far to use the
Wow.
database. Some of the largest animation studios in Los Angeles have requested it, which is really exciting, as well as some kind of run-of-the-mill production companies who do commercials, explainer videos, things like that. A couple of representatives, management companies have requested it, so that was really exciting. So we published it at disabledvoiceactors.com, and then the actual database itself is password protected. So that way, people's information is safe and secure, and we're kind of vetting anyone that requests access to it to ensure that they have a legitimate need for that and actually do casting. And it's
you
just
said you
now
just posted this all went live just this past December?
in December. Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so
So now it's
barely a
just kind of
month
like
old, 2 months
taking on a
old
life of its
maybe.
own.
Wow. Congratulations. That's awesome. And what like another incredible example of entrepreneurship and business mindedness that you're demonstrating, that it doesn't mean that you have to build it just for your business, but looking at a community standpoint and how can we
Yeah.
lift up everybody else in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen there's a really great resource, the 1 in 4 Coalition, which is a nonprofit advocating for more inclusivity and accessibility for disabled creatives in Hollywood. And I have had the benefit of getting to know some of the people who work with that organization, and they share some really sad statistics on social about how few disabled people are working, whether it's above the line or below the line in different things. How many disabled characters we see on television and in film, and then actually how many of those characters are actually portrayed by disabled people, which is lower
Mm-hmm.
and sad. So, I've been starting to digest more and more about how little visibility and access folks have. And, I've gotten to a point in my career where, within the community, I have a little bit of a recognizable name from presenting at conferences or teaching classes. And I take that responsibility, as a very heavy burden. Like I want to do
Mm-hmm.
right by the community. But I knew that with at least like my presence in the community, by kind of standing behind it and promoting it, like people would recognize that this is a quality resource, and it's something that I'm endorsing and putting my time into. And to be honest, I don't care if it doesn't help me get one job, but if it
Yeah.
helps other folks who don't have the kind of platform and access I have, and maybe wouldn't have had the resource to get their name and their demo in the hands of these 45 people who have requested it, if it helps them get an audition and get the opportunity to read for things that they're right for, and to lower that gate, that artificial gate that exists, so that they can
Mm-hmm.
actually be seen, I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic. And when we spoke last week or 2 weeks ago, we were both kind of talking about like that relief and ownership of disability, or me with my sobriety and with my back pain and stuff like that. And as soon as you own something, that breath of fresh air of like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I'm like, I have community. What was that journey like for you in terms of recognizing your disability and how you pivoted your career to accommodate for it, but also not let it hold you back from anything, obviously, because you're this, the way I describe you to people is like, I'm like, Maria is like a fucking titan in VO. And she is, it's, I don't know, like if you're in the game and you like, who she is. So I'd
I
love to hear
appreciate
kind
that.
of your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, my disability, and I have psoriatic arthritis, which has resulted in a mobility disability. I had my knees replaced when I was 32, and while that helped my pain profile significantly, it left me with a slight kind of off kilter gait when I walk, which causes residual kind of like back and hip pain just because my
Mm,
legs are not really aligned the way that they should be. So I end up with like residual mechanical pain after like walking or standing. So a lot of times I choose to use a wheelchair or scooter or a combination of both, depending on the situation. Um, and the reality is that my disability ended my on camera and my theatrical stage career, and it took me a really long time to accept that. So when I was in New York, sans bank job, pursuing acting full time, that was from 2010 to 2014. I made great strides really quickly after having a full time job that prevented me from doing a lot of different things. I got representation. I was auditioning for everything from summer stock theater to, Broadway shows and replacements and tours. I was auditioning for TV and film. I went to producers for a role on Boardwalk Empire. Like I was doing it. Like the thing, I was
mm-hmm.
doing the thing.
Yeah.
And it started to get worse and worse. And I tried to hide it and just like pretend that it wasn't happening. And it got to the point where I realized, like, if I were to book this job that I'm reading for, I don't know that I can be on set for 18 hours. I don't know that I can go to Steiner Studios and walk the distance from the trailers to the set. And I
Mm-hmm.
started to have these like little mini panic attacks to myself that, like, what if I am a good actor and I book this job and then I can't physically do it, and I get there and they're like, "What? You're broken? Did you bait and switch us? Like, what's going on?"
Yeah.
And I had kind of like my little come to Jesus moment was, I had an audition for a really cool off-Broadway show, and just a role that I really sunk my teeth into. I worked really hard on the sides. It was a very kind of like over the top dramatic role. And I walked into the room, and the casting director, who I had auditioned for several times, she was like, "Oh, hi, Maria. So great to see you. Oh, are you limping?" And I was like, the jig is up. And I was like, "Oh, it's raining. My joints, arthritis."
I have
In,
ESPN in my knees.
inside, I died. Like my
Yeah.
heart just like literally dropped to my shoes. And I did my scene. And I know that I didn't bring, half of the energy and excitement that I wanted to, because she took the wind out of my sails, not intentionally. She didn't know, but like
No.
by her by her noticing something that I thought I was doing a really good job masking,
Yeah.
that kind of just like took away all of the artifice that I had built for myself. And it was kind of later that year that I decided, like, this is really not working for me. And New York is such a hard place to live, period.
Mm-hmm.
But throw in a mobility disability. Think about all, for those of you that live in New York, think about all of the times that you're standing and waiting for something, or that you get on the train and there's no seats and you're standing. And that was the hardest thing for me, just like standing somewhere, standing still. And then
Hmm.
God forbid you get off at, Lexington and whatever, and the escalators aren't working and you're 12
Well,
stories
and so
underground.
many,
So
especially in
many
Queens, so many
stairs.
stations don't have elevators, don't have
No, and the
any
ones that
mobility
do,
accessibility.
they're either out of work or they've been used so many times as a urinal, you don't want to get in them. And it's
Yeah.
just the accessibility in the city is just really, really challenging. And I lived in a third floor walk up too. So
Hmm.
there was just a lot of realities about living and trying to work in New York City that were really hard with an unfunctioning body. So I made the decision to move back to Buffalo, which is where I grew up. Buffalo is a very kind of easy to get around type of town. Most of the time you are parking your car in your driveway or your garage, and then you exit your house and you get directly into your car. It is not a pedestrian environment in the least. So I moved back, I got an apartment, and I wanted to continue to do voiceover. I was also at that time working for a nonprofit organization remotely. So I was kind of doing both things from home. But this was pre the like full home studio revolution.
Hmm.
So when I left New York, I didn't I sunset the like theatrical on camera career, kind of closed that chapter with my reps, wished them well, they wished me well, all that stuff. But I kept everything open with my voiceover team, and I kept asking, like, is there an opportunity for me to, do my MP3 audition from home on the auditions that I normally would have gone into a casting director's studio to audition for. And then if I book the job, like, I'll come to New York. Like, I've got enough JetBlue points, or I'll drive, whatever. And none of the casting directors would like let my agent like basically pull copy for me. It was
And what
like, you
year
need
was
to be.
this? Because I mean, people starting in
Yes.
voiceover now. I mean, even me, I started like at the like right before, like maybe 2 years, 3 years before
Yeah.
shutdown. But what year was that?
So this would have been like 2014 to 2019. So these are like the 5 years before the pandemic. So at that time, there were still people who like literally did not know that there were professional voice actors working from home. Like, I
Yeah.
think everybody in the system knew that like the promo and trailer guys had like studios in their home, because literally they are like chained to their desk, right?
Yeah.
Because if you get like
The
a
ultimate
network
golden
promo contract or
handcuffs.
whatever, like, you need to be like on call all the time. So I think there was an understanding that like people who had those kind of contracts had studios in their house. But like an average working class commercial voice actor, like that kind of person who typically would have been going to casting directors' offices to audition in New York and then reporting to any number of, post houses, Sonic Union, Gramercy Post, whatever.
Hmm.
There was not an understanding that there were people in that ecosystem that had home studios. And no matter how many times I told my agents or whatever, or I went to casting director classes to like continue to try and like make connections, no matter how many times I told people that I literally have the equipment that they have at those places, and I have the connection technology, Source Connect, which nobody was talking about at that time, to be able
Hmm.
to connect to them, like no one cared. So there was this whole period of time where all of these opportunities that I had access to in New York, suddenly that door shut for me. And what that did was that created the drive in me to build the business that I have today, which
Yeah.
is a huge industrial business of my own clients that I mostly acquired from online casting auditions, or some targeted reach out to folks on LinkedIn or via email if I had a strong pitch. And then some regional agents. Regional agents were a little less precious about location, and if you had good availability and weren't like working full time and not available to audition or do daytime sessions, and you had Source Connect, they were willing to represent you. So from 2014 to 2019, I was really underrepresented on the coasts for like major campaigns, but I was doing a lot of stuff with regional agents and my own clients, and getting better and better, and booking things here or there. And then in 2020, I made the decision to take on management, and then COVID hit, and I've never been busier. And it was
Yeah.
suddenly like all of these geographic barriers that I was like losing my fingernails trying to like scratch up these gates and these fences that were put up to keep me out of, not me personally, but that the artificial
Yeah.
gatekeeping that kept people who were not geographically in New York or in LA came crashing down. And suddenly every agent knew what Source Connect was, and every agent knew what a Source Connect test was. And like,
Yeah.
suddenly those of us who were like ready to go, we were back in business, and I got
It was
1,000
wild.
times more auditions than I had gotten in the previous 5 years. So back to your disability question, what has been awesome for me is the ability to control my environment, working from home.
Yeah.
The slog in New York was hard because you'd have to allocate, 3 hours to get to and from the audition to read a 15-second piece of copy. Or,
Yeah.
you're in a studio. If you're booked for a session, they book you for 4 or 5 hours because they record you, then they're mixing to pictures. So then you're just like sitting in like the post-production studio's like lunchroom, like trying to decide if you've taken too many snacks for your allotment or
If
if you
they
can
let you out
continue
of the
eating the
booth, I've
scones.
been in sessions where like I was literally on that tiny wooden stool in a
Oh, they
booth for
forget
like
about
an
you.
hour and I'm like, hey, can I take a piss?
Yeah, it's like they just
And they're like,
completely
oh
forget that
yeah,
you're
for
there.
sure. I know. And one of the things that like, so when you were talking about living in New York City with psoriatic arthritis and all of that, that was bringing back and doing these auditions and stuff like that with that pain and
Yeah.
will I book this and then be taken out later because of this? Like that was I almost started crying because I think I pushed out so many of those memories of my own physical pain for being in pain almost every single day for 11 years, like from the age 18 to 29. I was just miserable, but I wouldn't admit that it was anything. I still wouldn't consider myself disabled, but I mean, it was like I was like nerve pain, nerve damage, a numb leg, all this stuff, and walking around New York City and telling yourself that this is okay and this is sustainable is wild.
Yeah.
And now, like, and that control over your environment now, like, thank God, like I feel very fortunate that like I've had a procedure now that has fixed it, knock on wood. But like I would still have sessions from home when I was like unable to walk. I'd just like crawl my way to the booth, sit for 30 minutes, grin and bear it, and then I'd go back to sleep or just lay down again.
Yeah, it's and
But
it's
it's
no way to
crazy.
live. But,
No.
having control over my environment and being doing my work in my house, I think this is and this is something that disability advocates have been like, shouting from the rooftops for many years before COVID, is that remote work is actually accessibility, and it's possible for people to do good work from home in a place where
Yeah.
they're comfortable and they have the things they need. There's just so many aspects to disability that if you have never been disabled or you don't have a member of your family who's disabled, that it's like it's hard to explain all of the small intricacies that go into the different things in your life. Like when I think about what I have available to myself here, I've set up my booth in a way that I'm comfortable. I do all of my voiceover recording seated. I have a really nice padded bench, and I've set up the inside of my studio bricks specifically for me. I've set
Mhm.
up my desk where I do my emailing and my editing specifically for me. I have access to, in my house now, we have two bathrooms where I have installed what's considered like seat height toilets, which are easier for me to stand up and sit down on. I use like different types of aids in the restroom because I have arthritis in my arms. So it's things like literally like going to the bathroom and doing like the hygiene things is
Yeah.
easier for me at home than it would be at an office or a studio.
Mhm.
I have a piece of physical therapy equipment that I can use during the day to stretch both my arms and my legs. And like having access to all of those things and allowing me to be at peak comfort during the day also allows me to do my job better. Because
Yeah,
if
it
I'm
only
not
helps your
in pain
clients.
and if I'm not upset and if I'm not anxious because of my pain or my disability or my challenges, then I'm going to be a better actor and I'm going to be a better worker and I'm going to be more efficient and all of those things. Because
Mhm.
if you're dealing with any kind of pain, whether it's chronic or acute, it takes up space. It takes up space in your body, it
A
takes up
lot.
space in your mind, and it takes up space in your heart. And this is something that so many disability advocates have been sharing, is that there are so many disabled people who wish to work and do what they're good at or what they've trained for or whatever, whether they have been disabled for their entire life or they became disabled as adolescents or disabled as adults. there's this stigma that like disabled people just are like living off the land and just like sitting around, and that's completely a complete falsehood. The
Yeah.
majority of disabled people want to be working, contributing members of society, but they want to do it in a way that's safe for them. And suddenly COVID hits, and now it's like everything's remote. School's remote, doctor's appointments are remote. You can
Yep.
close your mortgage over Zoom. And all the disability advocates were like, see, we told you it was possible. It's been possible for the
Yep.
last 5-10 years. And then, like, as everybody at home kept the world running, kept companies running, kept schools running, kept businesses running. And then it was like, oh, okay, great. Now we need everyone to go back to work. And the disabled people were like, hi, how are you? I do great work here, and I'd like to
Yeah.
continue to do work here. And it's just completely left out of this conversation about like getting everyone back to the office, and like we miss the company culture and blah, 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 blah. And like the disabled people are once again just like completely pushed out of that
They'll
conversation,
pass.
out of that consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's how fortuitous that you had the foresight to make that space for yourself beforehand, and get yourself to a position of finding the rep that you have now, to even before everything shut down. I know, like, one of my I pure dumb luck on my end of like the agents I signed with for New York and LA, with Innovative, is like one of my gigs during shutdown was to help people get up on Source Connect and to get TV, film, and Broadway actors a home studio set up and know what Source Connect is and like know how to like change your input and output. But it's and now that like everybody's going back to in studio stuff, it's not the same. But yeah, I mean, I think this resource that you've created is so important and so needed. And that we'll also include the link to that in the episode description too, and anything else, any other organizations that you want to share, we'll make sure that we have on there. Um,
Yeah, and the intake
Switching
form is on a
to
rolling
yeah,
basis. So anyone who didn't get a chance to join yet, if you're hearing about it and you're a disabled voice actor, you can join it anytime, and it's free. It's free to come into the database, and we don't charge anyone to use it. So I absorb the
amazing.
hosting costs, so it's free for everybody on both ends.
That's awesome. That's really special. Now, something equally as serious. Uh, you were on HGTV House Hunters?
That's like my fun fact. Like when you would go to like leadership camp or something, and you're like,
Mhm.
"Hi, I'm Maria. I'm from Buffalo, and my fun fact is," so yeah, my fun fact is that my husband and I were on House Hunters.
That's
Um,
wild. What? How did that happen? And are you in said house?
No, so it was the house that we purchased previously. We were on in 2017. So we were first of all, I am a lifetime HGTV fan. It
Yeah.
was the HGTV and DIY watching gene. I don't wish to execute any of the things. I just wish to watch them. Watch them. That was embedded quite young from my mom.
Uh-huh.
So, I am a House Hunters International, Property Brothers, you name it, I watch it on HGTV. So when my now husband, at that time we were engaged, we were getting out of the apartment that we were living in and we were looking to buy a house. I was like, oh, we should find out if House Hunters is casting. Because I noticed that they had been doing a lot of episodes in the Northeast. And I was like,
Hmm.
I wonder if they've like targeted and are doing like a lot of episodes up there. So I literally went onto Pytown Productions website where they have like the casting form for House Hunters. And it was like, all your biographical information, and then like, have you like do you have a realtor? Are you currently searching? Have you put in an offer? Like, what stage are you at? So I filled all of that out, and they reached out to me in like a week. They're like, "Hi, how are you? Like, would you like to do a video audition?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I would." So they sent us the information for the video audition, and then I basically sat my now husband down and I was like, "Okay, we are going to teach to the test here. They want drama. So everything I say, I want you to disagree with, and everything you say, I'm going to make a face." Because that's what they want. They want the husbands and the wives, or the
It's
wives and the wives,
brilliant.
or the husbands and the husbands. They want
Yeah.
conflict. So I was like, I want a modern home that's like all ready to go. I don't want to do any renovations. And he's like, I want an ancient farmhouse with ghosts. So we just like, I knew after I watched our audition video, I was like, there's no way they're not going to pick us
We
because
booked it so hard.
he's just like muttering these like funny things. And I'm like, I keep bringing it back to like center. So sure enough, we got the call that we were picked, and then I had to talk to my realtor. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. So to make that half-hour house hunting episode, it was like 5 days of filming. So you do the 3 house tours, and then you do like the interview days, and then they come back and do the reveal after you've moved into the house and all of that. So it was like 5 days of filming to make that episode. So it was really
Wow.
hard. But it was a lot of fun. It was really fun to see how the sausage gets made. We had an amazing director for our episode. Her name is Stacy, and she is just like this sassy woman from Philly. And like, I just loved her so much. I still follow her on Instagram. And we had a great time, but it was so cool to see the ins and outs of it. And then when our episode came out, it was just so great because like all of the things that I knew they were going to do to like put us against each other, they did. And like people on Twitter were just like absolutely like taking us apart.
And you're like, excellent. The plan is executed perfectly.
Yeah, mostly because of my husband and my origin story, which is we met on Bumble, and he had posted a profile picture. He had just canned some pickles. So he has like on the like kitchen counter just like a bunch of pickles, and then he's like gesturing like, look at my pickles. And I love pickles. When I go to a restaurant and I order a burger, I will say to the waitress, please bring me like a cereal bowl sized side of pickles. Like that's what I'm asking for. So my opening line to him was, well, it looks like your pickling and canning game is on point. And we told that story like a little bit on HGTV. And like literally people on Twitter were like, this woman loves pickles and she got a husband. Like, how do I like, I like pickles. How do I get a husband? So people were just like eating up our story. And then it just kind of escalated from there. But yeah, everyone thought I was my guiding purpose was I wanted a gas stove because you can't make grandma's sauce. My grandma's like Italian red sauce. You can't make grandma sauce on an electric stove. You need a gas stove. So that was like my through line through the episode. Eric's through line was he wanted a basement. So it was a battle for a basement. So like everyone, obviously with every house that we saw, they really like honed in on the fact that I want a gas stove. So like everyone on Twitter was like, this bitch doesn't know that like you could just like put a gas line in. And I'm like, guys, they crafted a story. Like, yes, I know you can get a gas line put in. Like, this is the story that they chose to craft. I'm not really an asshole.
I love that there's also a Twitter community for people to just shit on the people who are
absolutely like, well, I mean, wow. at any time during the day, like House Hunters is running somewhere. So if you just
days in school were always, it's just you let HGTV or TLC just run
in the background. Yes. But like if you search the hashtag House Hunters and you get past like realtors that are just throwing it on their posts and you get to like people talking about the show, it's great. I think it's a national pastime to like rag on the people, which, you know, I love it when they're like, oh, like, you know, my name is Charles and I'm a hamster trainer and my wife is a stay-at-home mom and our budget is $9 million. You know, like, I think people just love those kind of stories.
How are you laundering money?
Yeah, exactly. Well, didn't you know hamster training is a cash business?
Well, Maria, again, an hour has flown by like that. And I adore you and so appreciate you reaching out to want to come on the show and just to hang out like this. I know this is far from the last time that we'll do this either on the show or just for shits and gigs on our own. But thank you again so much. Before I ask you a couple of quick fire questions,
oh boy,
where can people find you and where do you want people to contact you or find your stuff or stay posted?
Sure. So my voiceover website is voicemymaria.com. If you're interested in the Disabled Voice Actors database, either as an actor or a voice seeker, you can reach that at disabledvoiceactors.com. I am on the socials, Twitter, Instagram, and I do have TikTok, but I'm not on there super often. But my handle there is at Maria Pendo. And you're welcome to connect with me on Instagram, LinkedIn. Instagram, mostly food and cats. LinkedIn, I post some job stuff every once in a while, so feel free to connect with me there. And otherwise, yeah, happy to connect with folks.
Amazing. All right. Quick fire questions. We got 4 questions for you. Whatever's top of
Okay.
mind, just real quick, no thought answers. What's a nickname you had as a kid, either from parents or friends?
Riri. That's from my dad. Yeah.
Love it. Who
And then a
inspires you
couple of
right
my friends
now?
call me Marbar.
Marabar. Ooh, Riri and
Yeah.
Marabar. I like this. I sense a rebrand in your future.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, who inspires you right now?
Oh, that's a great question. Selma Blair.
Love it. What's a piece of content that you can't get enough of? Can be a book, TV show, album, podcast.
I would say there's a couple. One is an account called Arctic Fox Daily, which
Okay.
is a wildlife rehabilitator not too far from me here in upstate New York who rescues and rehabilitates foxes. I'm a
Oh,
fox enthusiast. I love foxes. I think they are the cutest. And she posts some amazing content. There is two influencers that go by the Pacinis, which is an Italian husband, an American woman, and she just tortures her husband with pranks.
yes, I've
I
seen
cannot
that.
I cannot get enough of their content. It is so
They're so
predictable, but I just
charming.
love it.
Yep.
And what's another one that I kind of look at all the time? I love Elise Meyer's new podcast. It's funny because it's true.
Oh, I haven't heard that yet. I didn't know she had one. I adore
Yeah.
her. She's just awesome.
I don't know if it's just like the messy bun game, like that, just really like connects me to her on like a deep cellular level. But I love her style of storytelling. Absolutely love it.
Me too. Awesome. Excellent choices there. Last question. It's a hard hitter. You can only have pizza one last time. Where from and what's on it? And if you have any food allergies, there's 0 side effects. It's just pure bliss.
That is not a hard question. Here in Buffalo, we have our own style of pizza.
Okay.
It's halfway between halfway between New York and Chicago physically and halfway between. So it is a flat pizza like New York, but we go for a doughier consistency,
Like a ciabatta
slightly.
consistency almost.
It's just we let it rise more. So the New York slices are
Okay.
like very, very flat and like you can
Yep.
fold them super easily. The buffalo dough, it just rises a little bit more, has more of a doughy consistency than that flat kind of New York consistency, but it's not a casserole like the Chicago deep dish pizza.
Gotcha. Yeah. Careful, you're
So
towing a dangerous line here with talking about deep dish to a Chicago native like
I
this.
understand.
So.
Listen, somebody gave me a gold belly gift certificate for doing right by them, and I
Oh.
ordered 2 deep dish pizzas from Pequod's. So like, there's an appreciation. But for me, a deep dish pizza and a Buffalo or New York pizza, they are like 2 separate things. Like
It
I
is.
wouldn't. You just don't treat them the same way. Like
Nope.
the deep dish pizza is like it's like a hearty meal. It's that like you don't grab and go a deep dish slice. Like that is
Can you
a
imagine if there was dollar deep dish slices on every corner in New York
Oh
City
my
and
god,
watching people
everybody
try
would
to
have
like
nobody would have any skin left on the roof of their mouth because they'd be burning it off trying to eat it on the go,
just covered in sauce?
just covered in sauce. Okay, so my pizza, I would get from a pizzeria we have here in Buffalo called Pesci's. My brother worked there as a manager for a long time, and it's like the local pizzeria that's closest to my parents' house, and I can still pick it up from where I live now. And I would get cheese, double pepperoni, and in Buffalo we
Mm,
do the char and cut pepperoni. They as they go into the oven, they
beautiful.
turn
Like
into
Prince Street. Yep.
those little discs of grease and
The
burn, which I
teacups
love.
of pep grease. Yeah, it's the
And
best.
then I love green olives on my pizza, which I know there are people are very touch and go on olives,
I
but
love you so much for
green
that.
olives.
Yes.
And we're baking the pizza well done. And not just well done,
Ooh.
but when I call, I ask for the burn it option. And that's when you get like the light blackness around the edge of the crust, and all of the rims of the pepperoni are all black, and the
Mm.
cheese has a little bit of a crunch to it. So cheese, pepperoni, green olives, well done, comma, burn it. And then I'm gonna dip the slice in blue cheese.
Wow. I think this is probably one of my top pizza answers. This is I can taste that. I can feel it. I can like see my like orange lips and fingers happening. This is
I
amazing.
can die happy knowing that I've made you salivate. That's outstanding.
Well, when I come to Buffalo, we'll go and we'll just
Yes,
gorge
please.
ourselves at Petchy's.
We have so many like food things here in Buffalo that like we claim as like only ours. We've got like our style of pizza. We have a sandwich called the beef on weck. We have a drink called Loganberry, which a comedian once described it as like the drink diabetes would choose to drink because it's so sugary. We have sponge candy. So we have all of these like
Wings.
local Buffalo delicacies. Oh, obviously the home of the chicken wing. We don't call them Buffalo wings here because we're in Buffalo,
Right.
so we just call them wings. But yeah, please come to Buffalo, come visit and have all of these foods and then leave with gastrointestinal distress.
Oh, I can't wait. Well, Maria, thank you again for making time. I adore you. This has been so much fun, and I can't wait to do this again, either
Sounds
here or
good.
on
Thank you
Buffalo,
for
in
having me.
Buffalo, or wherever we are. Yeah, I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Second Cup with my friend Maria Pendolino. To keep up with everything that Maria has going on, and she has a lot, you can follow her at Maria Pendo on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, please check out the episode description to find her personal website, voicebymaria.com, her political spot VO casting site, bluewavevoiceover.com, and her disabled voice actors database, which is www.disabledvoiceactors.com. Huge thank you to the Second Cup family, Alberth Bursey, Sarang Sharma, Julia Shepard-Morgan, and Tara Seuss for allowing me to keep my head on straight and running everything behind the scenes. Lots more fun stuff coming from the Second Cup family this year, so stay tuned to the next episode for another amazing conversation with somebody really cool. Toodles!